You stand as living proof that resilience cannot be calculated, controlled, or crushed. What you carry inside bends every attempt to break you into fragments of wasted effort. They keep searching for explanations in shadows, but the truth is beyond their reach. Your presence is a mystery they'll never solve, and that unsettles them more than anything. When storms gather against you, the very winds that rise to destroy you twist back and sweep away those who summoned them. It is not coincidence but alignment. The deeper order of things ensures that what is sent out returns multiplied. That cycle cannot be interrupted, and you are the axis it now revolves around. The walls they thought would trap you have become mirrors, reflecting every scheme back into their own faces. No matter how carefully they plotted, the ground beneath them shifted the moment they stepped against your path. What seemed like strategy was in fact their undoing. Sleeplessness plagues them because they cannot silence the question that burns. How do you continue forward with such force when the weight should have buried you? They whisper to each other, desperate for answers, but the silence of the universe is their torment, and the clarity you embody is their defeat. Every attempt to choke your growth has only fertilized the soil beneath your feet. Their grip on resources dissolves as if slipping through water, while opportunities align in your favor with an ease that looks like fate but is actually the harvest of your endurance. Those who once mocked your survival now find themselves paying the cost of their arrogance. Not because you wished them harm, but because the balance of all things is not blind, it simply restores. What falls into your hands is not stolen but delivered, because it was always meant to be yours. What you've endured is not ordinary struggle, it is the sculpting of someone chosen to defy every expectation. That's why your presence unsettles so many. You don't just walk away from battles, you walk away crowned by the very storms meant to erase you. You are the type of soul that forces hidden plots into the open simply by existing in truth. The very webs spun to entrap you have turned into snares for the weavers themselves, leaving them entangled in the very threads they once believed would bind you. Their whispers carried the weight of deception, but your presence has turned every secret into a spotlight they cannot escape. You didn't stumble here by accident, you were led. If something in your spirit is stirring, don't ignore it. Tap join to access exclusive content, prophetic insights, and a community of purpose-driven souls. This isn't just a membership, it's your moment of alignment. Step into who you were born to be. Welcome to the Chosen. What unfolded began with a mask so convincing that even warmth felt real in its presence. Behind soft words and gestures of care was a heart rehearsing betrayal, collecting your trust like stolen currency to spend on your downfall. Every smile was a shield for their concealed intent, and every conversation was a ledger where they quietly recorded details they believed would one day dismantle you. Your routines were not harmless to them, they were notes in a manual they thought would teach them how to dismantle your light. Dreams you shared became coordinates they tried to strike, and every move you made was marked like points on a map of conquest. They walked through your life like an observer in disguise, convinced that endless performance could keep suspicion at bay. But arrogance carries a blindness that no disguise can protect. They miscalculated the consequence of betraying someone whose path is carried by forces greater than human schemes. Their belief in control shattered the instant they collided with the unseen order that shields you. That single misstep transformed their advantage into irreversible downfall. Now they find themselves caught in the recoil of their own intent. The fabric of their life frays in places no hand can repair, and their body bears fractures with no logical explanation. Where once they stood with confidence, they now stumble in confusion, wondering how their world could collapse so quickly, unaware that it is the echo of their own choices returning. Relationships they leaned on are dissolving, not through rumor or accusation, but because truth seeps into every hidden corner. Resources slip away faster than they can gather them, consumed by situations that appear out of nowhere, multiplying with relentless persistence. What they set in motion has looped back, demanding repayment with a weight they cannot bear. This was never a lone act of malice. It was a scheme interwoven with others who mistook your light as something they could extinguish. What makes this more than personal betrayal is that it was an orchestration, a chorus of deceit that thought it could overpower destiny. Yet what stands unshaken is you, and what crumbles is everything that rose against the path chosen for you long before they ever plotted. You carry a presence so disruptive to darkness that hidden circles gather just to speak your name. What unfolded against you wasn't the work of a lone enemy, but a carefully orchestrated network of those who thought secrecy could shield their intentions. Behind closed doors and in places far from sight, they outlined strategies like architects of collapse, believing their collective malice could fracture what is unbreakable. They mistook numbers for power, convincing themselves that if enough voices echoed the same curse, the natural order would somehow bend. What they could not comprehend is that the unseen realm records every intention like ink on eternal scrolls. Every whisper became evidence, every plot a signed confession waiting to be unveiled. The tribunal they never imagined was already forming long before they declared you their target. Their mistake was treating the sacred like it was common, believing that ordinary hostility could sway eternal law. They entered a domain that cannot be bribed, bargained with, or manipulated, bringing fragile human tricks to a stage ruled by forces far beyond their reach. Their schemes, clothed in gossip and sabotage, escalated into shadows darker than they understood, each step leading them deeper into consequences they were warned not to touch. They began stealing fragments of your reality, mistaking objects for essence. A strand of hair, a piece of fabric, an image where you smiled, collected like trophies of envy, as if ownership of remnants would grant them dominion over the whole. They poured their bitterness into these stolen tokens, weaving rituals of intent that could never penetrate what protects you. If your heart overflows with God's blessings, let that love shine. Click the super thank you button and give $50 or more to plant seeds of faith that will impact countless lives. Your generosity reflects His abundance. Be a vessel of His grace and watch His kingdom flourish through you. They built their rituals with fire, blades, and chants, convinced that symbols could strike wounds into your life. Yet their creations were nothing but mirrors, reflecting venom back to its source. The images they pierced only cut into their own fate, and the flames they spoke over became torches lighting the path of their undoing. Some, hungrier for power, descended further, reaching into places that even shadows hesitate to dwell. They sought bargains with entities that thrive on despair, spilling offerings in exchange for illusions of control. The cost was far greater than they anticipated, for every drop given became a chain binding them tighter to the very darkness they thought they commanded. The acts they performed with trembling hands were never assaults on you, but on the very order that carries your steps. And now, the weight of what they summoned crushes them, while you rise untouched. They tried to erase you, but instead erased themselves from the favor of the universe, proving once again that destiny cannot be rewritten by those who never held the pen. You are the kind of presence that stands beyond reach, shielded by currents stronger than any shadow could hope to navigate. Those who tried to send harm in your direction were blind to the truth. Every gesture, every scheme, every attempt to touch you dissolved before it ever reached your spirit. What they believed was power was nothing more than dust colliding with an unshakable wall. The energy they tried to hurl against you was caught and folded back with flawless accuracy, snapping into their own lives like arrows rebounding toward their archers. The forces they thought would answer their call found no entry point into your world, for the gates around you are guarded by watchers they will never comprehend. Their illusion of control was broken the moment they stepped onto ground they had no right to tread. And then the reversal began. What was meant to weaken you became a catalyst that propelled you higher. Places where you once hesitated turned into arenas of triumph. Challenges that might have crushed another became stepping stones under your feet. The very storms they summoned to drown you turned into winds that carried you upward with impossible momentum. Doors appeared where walls had once stood. Timing became so flawless it silenced every skeptic, as though unseen hands were arranging victories on your behalf. To those who opposed you, it was unbearable to witness. Every strike they attempted not only failed but fueled your rise. Each effort to dim your light only sharpened its brilliance. Each attempt to drain you only magnified your strength. The darkness they sent was consumed and transmuted into radiance, and with each failed blow, your resilience grew into something they had no framework to explain. You were not simply surviving their attacks, you were thriving because of them. They were forced to confront the unthinkable, that their hostility had become the very source of your empowerment. Fear crept into their gatherings like a chill they couldn't shake. Their trusted rituals and strategies, once effective against others, collapsed in your presence. They stared at outcomes they could not rationalize, victories rising out of defeats they thought were certain. In their confusion, their confidence shattered, leaving them with questions they could not answer. Whispers turned into panic as they wondered whether they had misjudged you completely. Perhaps you were never bound by the same rules as others. Perhaps you were something else entirely, operating within a design they could neither see nor control. In their desperation, they sought darker teachers and more perilous paths, unaware that the deeper they searched, the further they slipped into their own destruction. You are the kind of force that unsettles realms both seen and unseen, and those who thought they could trade away your future quickly learned the weight of their mistake. They promised anything, life, loyalty, blood, if only destruction could reach you. But when the shadows they invoked arrived, they collided with a reality that none of them had imagined possible. Those powers encountered a wall of brilliance so immense it silenced them instantly. What they met was not weakness but an authority rooted in something eternal, a presence encircled by protectors that eclipsed every oath they had sworn. Compared to what surrounded you, their borrowed strength looked like sparks trying to outshine the sun. Some of them broke on impact, unraveling into nothingness, while others fled trembling, carrying back a single chilling report: "You brought us before someone untouchable." That confession sealed their doom. Because even when the attackers failed to strike you, the bargain they had entered remained. Promises made in desperation had to be honored, and the hunger of the forces they summoned turned toward the very mouths that called them forth. Payment was demanded, and the collectors had no interest in mercy. The tables turned swiftly, and those who believed themselves masters became prey. They discovered that the very entities they once commanded no longer answered them, but consumed them instead. Debts bound in silence were now chains tightening around their own lives, and the feast was their ruin. Among the darkest revelations was the discovery that betrayal had not only come from outsiders, it had sprouted from within bloodlines. A relative who should have been guardian instead became a traitor, turning private memories into weapons, family history into ammunition. They revealed truths only intimacy could provide, details never meant for enemy hands. Objects from your past, entrusted within the circle of kinship, were handed over as tools for attack. In return, they accepted payment that felt like reward but was in fact a curse disguised as fortune. Their reasoning was twisted into excuses: envy of what you carried, resentment of the light you bore, or entitlement born from shared heritage. They convinced themselves they were justified, but justification does not erase betrayal. By trading loyalty for gain, they didn't just break bonds, they tore open doors through which ruin would now pour into their own line. The outcome has been merciless. The wealth they thought would elevate them slips away through endless crises. Their own households shake under burdens they invited unknowingly, with their children bearing storms they never deserved. Health fades, peace collapses, and relationships rot as the truth emerges piece by piece. The reward for their treachery has proven to be nothing but decay, an inheritance of sorrow that multiplies through generations. You are the kind of soul whose very existence rewrites the outcome of battles before they begin. The final card your enemies played was someone trained to erase lives without hesitation, a figure whose reputation was built on precision, silence, and the absence of failure. To them, you were meant to be just another assignment, no different from the countless others whose stories they had ended. This individual moved with practiced calculation, studying your movements as though charting constellations, believing familiarity would ensure success. Every pattern was noted, every routine dissected, and a plan was assembled with the cold detachment of someone who had long since separated conscience from action. For them, life and death were logistics, and you were supposed to be a box to check. But the moment their path brought them near yours, something happened that defied all their years of experience. An unseen weight pressed against them, not like resistance from flesh and blood, but like a force announcing you cannot cross this line. Their training did not prepare them for the sense of magnitude that radiated from your presence, a magnitude that felt like standing before lightning trapped in human form. Confidence, once their constant companion, vanished. Muscles that had never betrayed them before now trembled as if refusing to participate. What was once routine became impossible, every attempt to step closer drowned in an internal storm of fear. The closer they came, the more unbearable the pressure became, until every fiber of their being demanded retreat. It wasn't hesitation, it was recognition. Something deep within them knew that to act against you would be to strike against a current that would obliterate them before the blow even landed. For the first time in a career defined by certainty, they could not carry out the task. The contract remained unpaid, the mission undone, not through weakness, but through revelation. Then came the most extraordinary turn. Without understanding why, they began diverting danger away from you, subtly disrupting the very schemes they were once enlisted to fulfill. The one set to remove you became, unwillingly, a shield in your favor. The hunter found themselves guarding what they had been paid to destroy. For your enemies, this was the collapse of their final weapon. Their most dangerous ally had transformed into your witness, a living testimony that even the sharpest blades break against what protects you. What was meant to end you only added to the chorus of proof. No matter the method, no matter the cost, nothing can sever the path marked for you. You are the kind of being whose very existence carries inheritances that can't be measured in coins or contracts. What awaited you wasn't just material wealth, but an accumulation of authority and power etched into your lineage by generations who walked before you. It was a treasury of spiritual legitimacy that had grown stronger across centuries, waiting for its rightful heir. Those who opposed you thought they could divert it through earthly maneuvers, mistaking forged papers and manipulated laws for tools strong enough to override eternal decree. They placed their hope in falsified signatures, legal claims, and tricks designed to make you appear unfit to hold what was yours. Believing that earthly institutions could be tricked into stripping you of birthrights woven into your essence, they played a game they never had a chance of winning. Every motion, every counterfeit mark was noted in higher records, where nothing slips through unnoticed. What they thought was clever became evidence in cases already forming against them. For a long time, you may have questioned why disasters spared you, why situations that consumed others only refined you. You may have wondered why weapons aimed at you suddenly faltered, or why hands that carried them grew heavy with hesitation. What you've carried within you all along is the explanation. Your existence moves on frequencies that ordinary malice cannot touch. You were never just another survivor, you were an emissary of light in human form. Your awareness rises above the planes where most attacks are even capable of landing. Attempts to bind you were like trying to hold down the horizon with ropes. Spells cast against you broke themselves upon your field of energy, and curses turned into blessings the moment they touched your aura. Those who tried to bring you down discovered too late that they had been hurling pebbles at mountains that do not bend. The very reason their darkest tools collapsed was that you are protected by a system they cannot even begin to map. Your presence transforms hostility into momentum. You are covered by guardians who dissolve assaults before they form, by light that nullifies shadows simply by being present. That's why their alliances with darker powers only destroyed them. That's why those they hired ended up protecting you. That's why their schemes never held ground against your path. Night after night, guidance came to you in ways unseen. Dreams turned into training grounds, where ancestors and guides revealed strategies before you knew you needed them. You walked into situations already equipped with answers you hadn't studied for, solutions you didn't consciously prepare. Generations of protectors had been aligning themselves for this very chapter, weaving layers of strength around you so thick no arrow from below could penetrate. By the time your enemies realized who they were really fighting, it was far too late. Their curses reversed, their contracts backfired, their allies turned against them, and their resources vanished. They thought they had cornered a mortal opponent, but in truth, they had declared war on something eternal, and the laws of balance they could never escape made sure justice fell on their own heads with precision they could neither fight nor flee. You are the kind of presence that forces the unseen laws of balance to activate with exacting force. Every strike launched against you became an entry in a cosmic ledger, debts tallied with interest that increased relentlessly. Those who schemed against you found themselves entangled in consequences of their own design, sinking deeper the harder they fought to escape. The more they resisted, the faster the weight of their choices dragged them downward, until they realized that no argument, no bribe, no desperate plea could alter the decree already in motion. Each participant was met with consequences crafted specifically for their role. The betrayer who had passed secrets into enemy hands saw their double life implode spectacularly. Relatives turned their backs, confidants exposed the truth, and communities that once embraced them now expelled them like poison from a body. While your vitality grew brighter under pressure, their health declined with symptoms no earthly physician could trace to natural causes. Illnesses appeared in ways that mirrored the harm they had intended for you. Minds fractured, bodies weakened, and confusion clouded their decisions until survival itself became difficult. The exhaustion they had plotted for you overtook them instead. The suffering they wished upon you embedded itself into their own days, draining their resources and burying them beneath endless expenses. Hospitals became their second homes, yet answers eluded every doctor. Justice did not stop at invisible realms, it stepped into the tangible. The theft of identity, the forging of documents, and the manipulation of systems turned into legal cases that tore apart reputations and futures. Those who thought their rituals were only spiritual discovered they had also committed crimes punishable by earthly courts. Worse still, the forces they summoned chained themselves not just to individuals but to entire family lines, embedding ruin into generations that had not yet been born. The curses they unleashed spread like contagion through their descendants, attaching themselves to children and grandchildren who had done nothing to deserve such burdens. Families that had once been prosperous now faced inexplicable collapses, blessings turned sour by ancestral betrayal. Darkness they thought they could control grew into parasitic attachments that refused to be dismissed, feeding on their bloodlines across time. Meanwhile, your lineage awakened to blessings long preserved. Spiritual gifts emerged in relatives who had never before shown such abilities, like seeds that had been waiting for the right season to sprout. Protection that had been woven by ancestors rose up in full strength, reinforcing your bloodline with favor and purpose. What your enemies tried to strip away only strengthened what was already secured by eternal decree. The story of your survival spread beyond immediate circles, whispered in places where the unseen battles of this world are studied. You became a living proof of what divine protection looks like in full expression, a testimony that attempts to destroy the chosen only result in their elevation. Opportunities unfolded in the visible world as recognition from unseen realms translated into alliances, resources, and doors that had never been visible before. What was meant to silence you became the very force that amplified your destiny. You are the kind of spirit that turns every attempt at loss into an avenue of restoration and overflow. What was spent trying to erase you is returned multiplied, transformed into resources that secure not just your survival but your flourishing. Streams of abundance are opening through your gifts, your work, your influence, channels where recognition of your authenticity translates into tangible provision. Unexpected ventures have prospered, doors have opened, and even inheritances once contested have expanded far beyond what they originally were. Every force that conspired to rob you inadvertently became the reason you now walk in greater wealth. Every scheme aimed at stripping you of what was yours created the opposite outcome. Instead of being deprived, you were compensated in ways so precise they could only be described as cosmic balance correcting the scales. Your adversaries watched helplessly as their own efforts transformed into the foundation of your stability. The very currency poured into campaigns against you became the building blocks of your financial freedom, redirected by laws far higher than human systems. Patterns emerged clearly. Every strike against you only elevated your position. Every act of betrayal worked like a filter, exposing counterfeit loyalty while sharpening the value of those who remained true. Each stolen opportunity returned with interest, larger than before, accompanied by blessings they could never have anticipated. In trying to dismantle you, your enemies became instruments of your refinement, forcing forth abilities that would have remained hidden had you not faced such relentless resistance. Their tactics became your training ground, their plots your preparation. Efforts to isolate you created connections stronger than any they tried to sever. What they meant for exile positioned you within communities that welcomed you with open arms, people who recognized your true worth. They attempted to close your book, but all they did was set the stage for a more powerful chapter. Every lie crumbled under scrutiny, every fabrication collapsed under the weight of truth, every weapon aimed at your reputation shattered before it could take root. What remains undeniable is that you are not ordinary. You are marked, chosen, and equipped in ways that render opposition meaningless. No amount of envy, malice, or deception has been able to dismantle what has been sealed upon your life. You endured storms designed to bury you, and you emerged standing stronger, carrying proof of resilience that cannot be imitated. The prosperity flowing toward you now is only the beginning. This increase is not accidental but preparation for higher callings, greater responsibilities, and larger assignments. You have been qualified by adversity, proven in unseen battlefields, and entrusted with abundance not just for yourself but for the mission ahead. The very struggles meant to end you became the weights that build your strength for what's next. What your enemies thought would end your story has only amplified it. Their hostility authored your testimony, their resistance carved your resilience. They have been consumed by their own darkness while you ascend into everything you were destined to become. Victory is no longer a question, it is the reality you live in now. The evidence is clear. You are thriving, rising, and stepping into a future that proves beyond doubt that nothing and no one can deny what was written for you from the beginning.